Thank you, everyone, for showing up for our second community space slash podcast. We're going to be talking about some of the problems that are common in gaming, how the team has struggled with those personally, and kind of what grinds their gears, and kind of some of the things that Spire is hoping to fix in gaming and Web3 in general. I'm kind of personally feeling a little bit under the weather today, so Tail is going to be taking most of the conversation. But yeah, happy to be here and chilling and hosting. I'm going to hand it over to Tail.
Yes, perfect. So like Sid already said, we'll be talking a little bit about like the state of gaming at the moment, maybe about the state of gaming previously, and that's like where I've been stuck at for the past couple of years, actually, maybe, because I used to be a very avid gamer. I used to play a lot of strategy games. I used to play a lot of MMOs. But lately, I haven't been able to get my head around playing the same game for more than 2 or 3 hours. And I kind of wanted to figure out why that was and how that happened. So for the past couple, maybe I think weeks or months, I've kind of been doing a little bit of research, and I've been playing a couple new games, and not with the intention, of course, with the intention of enjoying it, but more with the intention of figuring out like what projects did and why they did it that way. And one of the best examples at the moment that I would want to give is a game that has come out in the 90s called The Settlers. And quite recently they came out with a new game, which is The Settlers. I think it's New Allies. And I was personally really excited for that game because it's one of the most played games from my own childhood. And basically what it is, it combines a city builder and a real-time strategy game in one. But it really focused on the city building, and it really focused on your resources and how you would set up your base and how you would set up your resources, how you would set up your army, and then focus on attacking or defending. So how the Settlers initially really worked is you started out with a resource camp, and you had to create like wooden structures, you had to create iron weapons, and in order to be able to create those, you had to create a woodcutter, and that woodcutter would go to trees. They would cut down trees, and those trees would disappear. And after a while, that woodcutter had nothing to cut anymore. So what you did was you created a forester. The forester that planted new trees, so the woodcutter could get more trees to get more wood, and then it would bring it to a sawmill. And then you would actually get wooden planks, and like with everything set up that way, you really had to think about where you would put your structures. You were really thinking about how many structures you wanted to place. And the most fun thing about that game, it might sound weird for a lot of people, but it was really challenging. Sometimes halfway the game, I would just quit the game, start over, because I realized I started out completely wrong. And there's still a couple of games that work that way. For example, a couple of years back, Anno came out, which is from Ubisoft as well. And I had the same problem with that. Like I played for an hour and then I figured, I did it completely wrong. I want to start over and see what I did wrong and how I did it, like and how I'm supposed to do it. And then 2 or 3 hours later, I noticed something else wrong. And instead of fixing it, I started over again. And one single match already gave me like a week, maybe 2 weeks of fun, because I was figuring out how it worked, because I wasn't handheld by the game. And that's something that's really bothering me with the new settlers. For example, with the old settlers, I had to find gold, I had to find coal, I had to find iron. And you got one of your settlers and you just sent him out to the wilds, to the mountains. And there he would grab into the ground, and he would maybe find iron, he would maybe find gold, or he would not find anything at all. And with the new settlers, I just sent one of my settlers to a random piece of patch of mountain, and I'm 100% certain I will find everything. I will find everything that I need. And when I click my settler, the piece of patch that I'm supposed to be searching for is already lit up. It's already showing me you have to find something here because there will be something here that you can need, that you can use. And then it finds it, I place my miner there, and it basically has an infinite amount of gold in it. And what I noticed with a lot of the games coming out recently that are already old games is that 20 years ago we were really trying to find a way how to increase in features, how to make it as expansive as possible, how to make people try to find stuff, try to figure things out. And that's the same thing with other games like World of Warcraft. And currently the games that are coming out, yes, they're absolutely beautiful, but it's all toned down into this one single thing that you have to do. And because the Settlers is initially just a strategy game, like a real-time strategy game, it's about trying to defeat the opponent. And what they did is focus on that. If I try to get fish, in the old Settlers games, I would need that fish to give to the people. And because you give that fish to the people, they work. And if you don't give your fish to the people, they just start wandering around and they don't listen to you anymore. But right now, the only thing that fish gives you is a × resource count. You just get resources faster. And that's all made with a specific goal to get as big as army as possible in a short amount of time. Because I don't actually know why. Because people really seem to like city builders. Just look at City Skylines, look at the new Pharaohs games. They work. People like it. People play it. People like to figure things out for themselves. But it's all about instant gratification. It's all about getting there as fast as possible. And then they kind of miss where you prefer the road towards the gratification rather than actually getting it. There's a couple games that I've been playing lately that are really the tactical RPG games that we're creating ourselves as well. And one of them is XCOM 2. And I just absolutely fell in love with that game. And for the past couple of days, I've been really wondering why I love that game so much. Yes, it has a storyline. I'm particularly not a fan with the storyline myself. But what I really liked about it is that all your actions had consequences. And it's the same thing what I just said with Settlers. It's the same thing with Anno. When I move my character to a specific place, the rest of my team gets those consequences as well. So every step you take and every move that you do, you really have to think about why you're taking that move. And funnily enough, that made the story a lot better as well. Because what XCOM did, and that's something that I really want to use myself as well, is that if you take a move, the opponent actually reacts to that move in terms of talking, in terms of future cinematics, in terms of how they react to what you're doing. And if you take a left or if you take a right, you get you get a different response back. And it's not really that the gameplay will be different, but it gives a little bit of a dynamic idea of how you're playing that game. So I've been toying with that myself as well a little bit, and we've been working on the dialogue system a lot for the past week, 2 weeks. And what I was actually surprised by this, but it's pretty easy to make that very dynamic, because I can have the NPC react differently based on the amount of gold that you're holding. For example, if you only hold 10 or 20 gold in your inventory, and his cheapest weapon is 5 gold or 10 gold, then the NPC might know, oh, he comes to me, but he only has enough gold to buy 1 or 2 items. And then he can just greet you and you can say, I have this sale, what do you want? But if you, for example, have 1,000 gold and the NPC knows that you can just buy his entire inventory, you can make that NPC excited. You can make that NPC really want to sell everything to you. So based on various items, based on your level, based on even your name length, you can have the NPC react in different ways. And even though that will not really change the gameplay itself, because the outcome will still be the same, it'll give you a different experience every time that you enter the game or every time that you go to the NPC, and it makes everything feel much more alive. And that's something, again, with Settlers, that's something that I've noticed as well. Every single game of Settlers is the same. And it didn't used to be that way. 20 years ago, that game was completely different, because the resources were in different locations. Where you would find gold previously, you would not find anything at all right now. So the entire game shifts based on one specific variable in the game. And even though that is really gameplay related, the experience, how you're experiencing the game, really changes based on the feedback that you're getting from that game in itself. And while Settlers is a very linear progression when it comes to developing one settlement, certain resources need to be found and harvested to build particular buildings, to train better units and continue developing a city. And some people react different to linear or non-linear gameplay. And what I'm trying to say with that is that games are trying to so the problem with a lot of games like these is that they're trying to gratify everyone. They're trying to make everyone happy by putting in the city building, but also putting in the strategy, and also putting in this, and also putting in that. But by putting in everything in that game, you're basically making a very simplified version of every single thing that you're making. And that's mostly the biggest difference that I've noticed with games from 20 years ago and games from right now. 20 years ago, they were making a game and it was specifically about one thing. One of my favorite games of all times is June 2000. It's a very straightforward game, but they really focused on one particular part of the game. They really focused about the real-time strategy feeling of that game. You didn't have a million things that you could do with that game. And I've been thinking a lot about that, and I've also been thinking a lot about how I want to create Spire. Even though Spire has multiple different mechanics in the game that you can do, it really focuses on one thing, and that's the story. So instead of focusing on a specific genre, which the main genre is tactical RPG, but because you can do different things, I wouldn't blatantly just call it a tactical RPG. But everything you do progresses the story. Everything you do gives you a reason to be in that story. And that's how we really want to like show our game and show Spire. And another thing that I want to talk about as well, another thing that I noticed is games used to have downloadable game assets. Games used to have mods. Games used to have community trying to help out with the game's experience. And combining that with the idea of adding multiple genres in Spire is we want to give out game assets as well. We want to give out an API to multiple game mechanics. That way, if we, for example, just giving an example here, if we create mechanics for a tower defense genre inside Spire, we will give other people the ability to really build on top of that and really get creative with that and show each other their levels and play each other's levels. And that really fits in with the entire NFT scheme as well. A lot of games running in NFTs only have one purpose for that NFT. And then they tell other people, or they tell their fans, you can buy this NFT, so this NFT is yours. We cannot take this NFT away from you. That's all fine, but what if they decide to quit the game? Then what do I do with my NFT? Like, what's the point of owning an NFT if that NFT can only be used for one specific source, for one specific thing? And that's kind of the entry into why Spire has multiple genres and why Spire has an API for other developers to use and why Spire is going to give out game assets. That means that other people with minimum effort can create a game within the Spire universe that people can play with the NFT that they own. So, for example, if we decide to create a Spire 2 and Spire 2 is being played a lot and Spire 1 is kind of not being played anymore by other people, but you don't want to play Spire 2, you just want to play Spire 1. That means that the NFT that you bought is kind of useless right now because you have an NFT for a game that nobody really plays anymore, so now what? And because we give out the ability for other people to build on top of that, they can build on top of Spire 1 and they can still have like a community playing around, and they can play each other's games with their own character, with their own items, with their own. And that really gives meaning to having an NFT, that really gives meaning to owning something, because you can do multiple things with that NFT, and you can keep your identity even though you're playing a different game. And that's mainly my problem solving on the GameFi. That's another thing. GameFi. It means gaming and finance. And I think that specific combination of words is the main reason that gaming isn't working at the moment. Because games aren't supposed to be about finance. Games aren't supposed to be about diminishing returns. Even though I do like the play to earn narrative personally, I don't think that is something that's going to work out long term. I think we should create. How would I say this? I think the best way to get NFTs out there is to take away the finance part and make it an extra rather than the main objective. So even though you can create a dungeon that we talked about last podcast, you can sell it, yes, but the fact that you can buy it and that it's yours also means that you can build on top of that, and you can build you can use maybe that level with a different game mode. You can use that level with a completely different game made by someone else from the community. So that really focuses on the ownership part of the NFT rather than the finance part of the NFT. I think that's mostly my rant about like gaming and the state of NFTs at the moment.
Very cool. Yeah, I definitely would agree with all of that, and I think that's where, like you said, most NFT like Web3 games are falling short. Is they're not fun, and they're putting so much focus on tokenomics and how much money are you going to get back, how fast, and they just end up not even being really much of a game. And then, like you said, people end up just stuck with these NFTs that were like really only valuable because of the hype around the project. They weren't valuable because they were actually useful items in the game or were fun or useful as a gamer. They were just had a lot of hype around them. So yeah, it's good to see that you guys are changing that direction with Spire.
Yeah, because the thing is, it basically goes the same with every other sale of like a random item. Like I'm looking at the lamp right here. Basically, there's finance with that as well. Like I can buy a lamp, I can use that lamp, and I can sell that lamp. It's the exact same thing as an NFT. But I didn't buy this lamp because the store owner kept telling me how good it keeps its value and how good you're able to sell it. And I think we should take that narrative of buying a lamp and use it in games as well, because you buy a game because you want to play it. You don't buy a game because you think it'll be worth more in 20 years. If it happens to be worth more in 20 years, that's amazing. Like, and the ability to actually being able to sell it again, that's amazing. That's what NFTs really bring into gaming. Like, you can buy a character, you can play that character, and when you're done with it, or when you get an amazing deal for your character, you can sell that character again. That's an amazing extra. But that should not be the main narrative of buying a character. The main narrative of buying a character should be, I want to play this game, so I'm going to buy this character. So that also means that you shouldn't make that character $100 to start with. And you shouldn't sell that character, like sell the idea of buying that character with, buy it now because in 2 weeks it'll be worth $2,000. People won't even play your game if you're selling your character like that. Because if I buy a character and I start playing the game, maybe I play it different than how other people would want to play my character. So that means that my character might even be worth less. Like there's a completely wrong narrative on playing games in crypto at the moment. And that's what we really want to change. And that's really how we want to change the focus from finance to actual gameplay.
That sounds amazing. I think that you guys are on the right track for sure.
Also, I'm interrupting you at the moment, but I actually also wanted to say is that when you're creating a game, and when you're thinking about creating a game, when you're thinking about the mechanics, when you're thinking about the story, people tend to think about all the things they can do and all the things that happen in a story. And that's something where a lot of game developers and a lot of story writers actually go wrong, because you just have to start really small and then enhance that and make that as beautiful as possible, make that as perfect as possible. And when that is done, then you start thinking about, how can I branch this out? Like you sure, you think about the start, you think a little bit about the middle, you think about how it should end, because you do need a goal for your road to actually go to. But actually creating it is more of a dynamic process rather than a very linear process. Because while you're creating, you'll notice that there's a lot of things going wrong. There's a lot of things that end up not working how it was in your head. And even when your game is ready and you start your QA and you start your beta, you'll notice that a lot of things that you've created and a lot of things that you thought were perfect actually ended up being not that well thought through, or working not that well as you expected it would. So the best thing you can do is start really small. Even if you're wanting to branch 3 or 4 genres into one game, make all 4 of them really small and then branch them out and then connect them together. And then through that process, then you can actually start adding new features, and you can start like working your way around making side quests, making side stories. And that's what I've noticed with a lot of indie developers at the moment, is where they really go wrong. You should really just start small.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it seems like people, and those are always like the really successful indie games too, that seem to like come out of nowhere. Is those ones that are really small and simple, but do something really well and really fun, and then they go on to like become a whole like brand behind them. But yeah, it always seems to start with those like really simple games that seem like almost hilariously simple. Like, just one of my favorite examples is, everybody knows it, but like Super Meat Boy. It's like the simplest game, but it's so complex and addictive, and like you can't stop playing it. But those are the types of games that people want, is the ones that have a genre and they do it really well, and then they have kind of something that builds around it.
Definitely. That's like we have a base building system, but that base building system is really simple, is really small, but it does give us and the players the ability to, in the future, create such a massive amount of features that we can put into it. But even a very small base feature like we've created already adds towards the story, already adds towards why you would want to create your character the way that you are creating. But initially, it's just a really small feature and really worked out really well.
Cool. I'm really excited to play, just because it sounds like there's so many different ways that you can spend your time. You don't end up, it's not like you have to hop in and immediately just grind dungeons. Like, you can kind of have some downtime and relax and play it kind of like a sim game. or you can go kill enemies and grind mobs and stuff like that. So yeah, it sounds like there's a something for everybody.
Definitely, there is.
All right. Yeah. Do you want to wrap it up here? How you feeling?
Yeah, I think that was actually it. Yeah, I just had a little bit of. I just had one little thing to add, but that's it.
No, that was great. That was a great addition. I can't wait for a week where I'm feeling a little bit better and I can kind of hop in the conversation more, because I love video games and I play video games like on a daily basis. So I definitely would love to chat about that. But yeah, I appreciate you kind of taking the reins for the conversation. But
that's all fine.
Yeah, anybody listening afterwards and hanging out, thank you so much for being with us today for our second podcast. And yeah, we'll be back next Friday. We're doing these every Friday at 1 p.m. EST. And yeah, feel free to come hang out with us.